Hey gang, so taking a little break from flying all my ships up to Grim Hex for a minute here. Mongrel Squad dropped a vid and I thought I might react to it because there's a lot of things that I say kind of in theory, and I felt that it would be good to kind of demonstrate what they're doing and show what things look like in practice and why I say things that I do. So if that sounds interesting, hang with me.
How do you look at that? Look at that. Get out of that.
You don't.
What happened?
Okay, so the Mongrels dropped this video, like I was saying, and it is it's a good example of what I've been saying in theory and showing why I say that in practice. So first thing I'm going to say is that those title screens right there, those are amazing and I like them. So this is a couple rules that I have that have kind of been spreading out across my videos, but I thought it might be good to have a video where I actually put all of those rules in one video with a clear example of why I say what I do.
AFK just 1 more minute. Perfect.
Oh, it's an MSR here at fucking Ida.
So right here, I'm going to stop it. You're an MSR or any kind of cargo trader and you're landing at an outpost to pick up cargo. You see a mantis there. Even if the mantis is unoccupied, that is not a cargo ship. That is a ship made to trap people. And the only people really flying those right now are pirates. That may not always be the case, but bells and whistles should be going off in your head if you land at or you're pulling in up to an outpost like this and there's like arrows or gladiuses or combat ships that don't have any cargo capacity. At that point, maybe peel off and go somewhere else. In this case, it turns out that the Mongrel was just there looting, but he was also keeping an eye out for anyone landing there, just in the regular routine. And since he's flying a mantis, he made it pretty easy to identify probably what he was, or at least narrow it down. So this is rule number 1. Pay attention. Pay attention to your surroundings. Pay attention to what's around you. Pay attention to what's in space. Pay attention to your radar. Just pay attention. Do not be a passive passenger in the verse. Now, the MSR pilot, either because he was paying attention or because he had a different idea in mind, they set up this trap in between Ida and Hurston, because if he were to drop or jump a straight line, he'd run into the snare. So at some point, the MSR pilot took a different route or went to another, probably more likely, went to another outpost on Ida to pick up more of the same cargo and then jump from there. So never went through the snare. I'll come back to that one later because that's another one of my rules, but there's a better example. So as you probably gathered from the beginning of the vid, the MSR got away. This guy will not. Again, pay attention. Hang on. I'm going to run this back a second. If you look right down here, this C2 is getting hammered by another ship. And chances are he probably has a crime stat, if I had to guess. I can't see one in the upper right, but he might be running a wide monitor because I'm also not seeing chat, which he could have just shut it off. Chances are he has a crime stat. That kind of falls into the same category that if I'm landing at an outpost and somebody has a crime stat, I'm going to be a little more hesitant to land there because that person, especially if they're in something like a C2, how did they get the crime stat? Probably by stealing or raiding another player. They might have bumped something, but that's a little bit more rare these days. But it's a person that's running criminal missions more often than not, or a pirate. So again, it doesn't mean you can't trade there. Just be aware that if somebody is sitting here, not trading, getting hammered, the ship is occupied, and they're just watching your ship.
I do have a buck.
Just be aware of your surroundings. So this one is interesting. So on this, I actually commented that the character guy didn't put his ramp up. He actually did. And somebody in the comments actually called me on and they're like, no, he did put his ramp up. But that's always rule number 3 is always make sure your ship is buttoned up. I can't count the number of times that I land at an outpost, look out, and somebody else is running cargo and their ship is wide open, especially when there is physicalized cargo and soft death and people can get into your ship. Always button up your ship. Always close it up. There are ways to open up a ship, but in armistice zones, it's a little bit harder. But if they force it open, once the armistice zones go away, you're going to be able to tell because the door's open and you know you closed it. When you get on, always F11, look at your ship comms, and that'll tell you if someone else is on your ship that you weren't expecting. But always put your ramp up. This guy did. So he did that part right. Where he screws up in the next part. So this right here,
I'm ready to jump on you.
this Manus player is putting himself on a direct line in between this outpost and Hurston. And their assumption is that the Carrick is going to take off from this outpost, point at Hurston, and then make the jump to it. So you can see they're all in a line there. So Hurston is that dot right there. And it turns out that is almost exactly what the guy does. So he jumps right into the snare and right into the trap. This is rule number 4, is don't fly straight lines. I also call this one, there's a reason why they call it space. You have a lot of room to move around, especially if you're seeing suspicious activity in your area. Pick a different route. Like if you come at this thing from a slightly different angle or jump to another moon first and then jump to Hurston, you're out of line of this whole setup that they're doing. So don't fly straight lines. So here, they just popped him out of Quantum. So now he's stuck. The Manus has a pretty big dampening field and it's fast. So it can outrun the Carrick. So now the Carrick is stuck. And so the only thing he can do is run away. He's solo in the Carrick. He does not have any guns he can control.
He's out of seat. Lock a missile if you can. Lock a missile.
So he gets out of his seat. What they're thinking he's going to do is go in bedlog. So what they do is they hit it with a missile. And that makes it a physicalized ship. It keeps it in there so that if he logs, the server knows that that ship has been engaged and it won't log that ship off. And I don't know if the pilot knew this or if he always intended to fight, but what he does is he puts his ship on cruise control and he's running down to the turret. And this one, there's 2 rules here. So the first rule is don't fly alone. And one of the comments I'd say is put a friend in a turret, any turret. If he had 4 other people on his ship and all those turrets are manned, all of these pirates would probably be dead, or at least severely hurting. He would have killed a couple of them. The guns on the Carrick are not a joke. But I understand that not everybody wants to ride in a turret all the time for the random 0.5% chance that somebody pulls you out of Quantum and engages you like this. So a lot of people solo run, especially right now because multi-crew gameplay isn't in. But when I say don't fly alone, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have someone in your turret. You can have somebody, if they don't want to sit in a turret, flying next to you in an arrow or a gladius or some sort of fighter, because even one fighter with him would have distracted at least 1 or 2 of these guys and maybe given the Carrick that has all the cargo on it a chance to escape. So when I say bring a friend, especially in these days right now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be on the ship with you. In fact, if they're flying next to you, that's 2 different targets that everybody has to focus on. Whereas if you have 5 people on the one Carrick, once they destroy the one Carrick or soft death the one Carrick, they've taken out all 5 people effectively. They've stopped you from running. Whereas if you have an arrow flying around, now you've got a different vector you have to worry about. Not only that, if the arrow is on his game, he pops the Manus, and
Okay, firing
then the lock's off and the carrot can get away. The Mongrels have been doing this for a long time, though. So, I mean, they know all of these little tricks. But yeah, bring a friend. Now,
On your vectors because things snapping around everywhere back and forth.
this is the final rule, is know your ship. So what he does, the Brogan here, which, sorry, dude, if you're watching,
Looks like. Yep.
bottom turret. He goes and he hops in the bottom turret. And this brings me to my final rule, is know your ship.
Effective.
And I'm going to get to that right now. So if you've been in a Carrack before and you've flown it, you probably recognize the seat I'm in. This is the actual pilot seat of the Carrack. And let me show you why that video is problematic. Note how long it takes to get out of the seat. Now we're going to full on run. I'm going to actually sprint here. And now we're in the bottom turret. Note how long that took. Now let me show you something else. And this is why I say know your ship. So we're going to go back to the bridge. So depending on how often you've been in a Carrack, you might or might not know that this is an option. This is the command station, and it is on the upper bridge of the Carrack. You can also fly the ship from here. Let me show you why, if you're going to solo fly this ship, which I strongly disagree with. But I get that we're at the point in development where right now solo flying these kinds of ships makes more sense. Let me show you why the upper deck, if you're going to solo fly, is a better idea. Did you see what that was titled? Gunner seat. Now we're in the upper turret. See how much faster that was? The better part about this is that now you have the option, if you realize you're getting torn up, or if you manage to blow up like the Manus or something, you jump out. Or if they board you, you are now this far away from controlling the ship. There to there.
Scanning for health. Yeah, still 95.
Your shield's almost down.
Your shield's looks down.
Double check snare. I'm able to spool.
And now he's out of it. And that's it, gang. So just those 5 rules are kind of the rules I live by in the verse, and
He's gonna black out.
they mostly work.
Yeah.
I understand that not all of them are always easy to do, especially the flying alone thing at this point. Eventually, we're going to have really good multi-crew gameplay, and people will want to be in those roles, and it won't be hard to get a turret operator, or we'll have NPCs that'll be able to sit in turrets. But those days aren't in yet. So see if you can convince somebody in chat, if you're not dropping with an org, just say, hey, anyone want to escort me in your fighter or whatever? And it doesn't need to be anything impressive. Even if they're in a freelancer, it gives the attackers something else to go on, and you both get to fly your own style. It's a thought. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments, and Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe the Mongrels too. They deserve it. They put a lot of work into these. And catch me next time.